thanks for joining me as we continue to learn interesting lessons from the Summa Theologia by St. Thomas Aquinas. I'm Dave Palmer, and this is a rather intriguing series of articles from the Summa as we continue to talk about God's nature, what God is, who God is. And this graphic that I have on the screen says what God is equals what God does. And there's also a picture there of a puzzle, because when we talk about ourselves or people that we know, the questions like what and why and when and who, these all have different answers because we're inside of time. What we do and who we are is not the same thing. And so again, we're complicated, God's simple. But let's look at a few articles that kind of highlight this point and see if we can make a little bit of sense of what Thomas Aquinas is saying about God in the Summa. Okay, so what does God do? And again, like I mentioned a moment ago, what God is and what he does is the same thing. It's very hard for us to understand that, but then again, we're not God, so it's supposed to be challenging. It's supposed to be difficult, but that doesn't mean we don't stop continuing to try to learn more about God. All right, so here's a snake. Its essence would be snakeness. Its nature has to do with it being a snake, but nature also implies, what does it do? It rattles, it slithers in the ground, it strikes, right? All these things that are unique to snakes, especially rattlesnakes, right? But what it is and what it does is not the same thing, right? The snakeness of it and what it does are two different things. So keep that in mind. And as we go in now, question 14, article 3 of the Summa, Thomas says, does God comprehend himself? Now think about that. To comprehend something means to know it entirely, know every single aspect of it. And would you say that you understand yourself entirely? Are there ever times that you're just like, why did I do that? That was stupid. Or, I can't believe this part of me that I continue to try. That's why we go to confession, right? We're always trying to improve ourselves. All right, so Thomas says God perfectly comprehends himself and can be thus proved. A thing is said to be comprehended when the end of the knowledge of the thing is attained, and this is accomplished when it is known as perfectly as it is knowable. Now it is manifest that God knows himself as perfectly knowable, for everything is knowable according to the mode of its own actuality, since a thing is not known according as it is in potentiality, but in so far as it is in actuality, as is said in Metaphysics 9 by Aristotle. Okay, so God is pure act. Okay, God is the first mover, the unmoved mover, the uncaused cause, right? He's perfect. He's simple. He's really amazing, right? And he comprehends himself entirely, which would make him unique among all beings, right? Now, this is really an interesting article in the Summa, whether the knowledge of God is the cause of things. And as I always say, we look at our own life experience to understand something like this. So this man builds a chair, right? Would you say that before he started building it, the concept of the chair was in his mind, right? So in a sense, the knowledge that this man has of this is the cause of it, because he then had to go and build and do the rest of it. Or this guy is writing a book or a paper. Isn't it in his mind before he starts to write it? Okay, think of your favorite novel, your favorite book. It's in the mind of the author before he or she puts pen to paper and writes it. So it's not too much of a stretch to understand that the knowledge of God is the cause of all things. It's basically the same thing. The knowledge of God is the cause of things, for the knowledge of God is to all creatures what the knowledge of the artificer, that's just like an artist, is to things made by his art. Now, the knowledge of the artificer is the cause of the things made by his art from the fact that the artificer works by his intellect. Now, it is manifest that God causes things by his intellect, since his being is his act of understanding. Again, it's all the same with God. His will, his intellect, his being, his substance, all the same, right? His suppositum. All right, and hence his knowledge must be the cause of things insofar as his will is joined to it. Hence the knowledge of God as the cause of things is usually called the knowledge of approbation. Okay, so again, it's amazing to think of God, because hopefully some of this will sink in and you'll say, okay, that's simplicity. To have all these things the same. If my essence and my existence was the same thing, I'd be a whole lot simpler than I am now, right? You too. All right, is there will in God, right? Here's the answer. There is. Okay, there is will in God as there is intellect, since will follows upon intellect. For as natural things have actual existence by their form, so the intellect is actually intelligent by its intelligible form. Now, everything has this aptitude towards its natural form, that when it has it not, it tends towards it, and when it has it, it is at rest therein. Okay, that's really interesting. When we don't have something, we want it, right? When we have it, we rest in it. You could think of a banana split, or anything that you desire, right? You rest in it. Okay, so that's it is the same with every natural perfection, which is a natural good. This aptitude to good in things without knowledge is called natural appetite. Here's an example. All right, a watermelon gets filled with ants. Why? Because these ants who don't have intelligence want it, right? They may not know what they want, but they somehow are being driven to get to this watermelon because they desire it, right? And we're not too different. We desire pizza. And we have a sensitive appetite that desires pizza. So we share that same sensitive appetite with the ants and the dogs and everything else, right? Okay, whence also intellectual natures have a like aptitude as apprehended through its intelligible form, so as to rest therein when possessed, and when not possessed, to seek to possess it, both of which pertain to the will. Hence, in every intellectual being there is will, just as in every sensible being there is animal appetite. And we're both. We have animal appetite, and we have will. Whereas, like an angel doesn't have the animal appetite; it has the will. And the ant doesn't have the will, but it has animal appetite. Okay. Hence, okay. And so there must be will in God, since there is intellect in Him, and as His intellect is His own existence, so is His will. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, that doesn't mean that God desires something that He doesn't have. It's just that, as we'll learn in other, there's a desire that He has that is not mean it's unfulfilled or that He has to work to get it, but He still wants something, right? It's not that He's lacking something, right? Okay, so here's a picture of people graduating from college or high school. This is something in the will, right? This is something that they desired. It's not a sensitive appetite like wanting a pizza or wanting a watermelon. This is something in the intellect. An intellectual appetite would be to graduate. If you need an example of will or will in our life, which you probably don't, just think about any time you're out on the road. Every single person here is exercising their will, because now they may be exercising their sensitive appetite, like going to get a hamburger, but they're also able to intellectually desire something. Otherwise, they'd be sitting at home on their couch. They wouldn't be out driving around because they're trying to get somewhere, right? Okay, well, I hope that brings a little bit of clarity to God, and as much as we are able to do it with our limited ability to understand something so sublime as God. And so when we say that what God is equals what God does, hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. And also, if it intrigues you a bit more about God and makes you want to pray to Him more and seek Him and learn about Him, then we are on the right track. Okay? God bless you. Thanks.